This meeting is being recorded.
My wingman? Are you number 6?
Yeah, but John wanted to be over there.
Oh, yeah. And we don't like to play those kind of silly games. It's kind of baby.
You don't have a meeting at all. You have to participate even though
You did, so I got one for my first term, and I got one for my second term. From the state. Term 3. Yeah. Okay. If I had a choice, I'd probably take the different.
Yeah.
What are we doing?
Yeah.
I was just happy to be here. So I did it.
it works best when it's really you are
Yeah.
faster.
Yeah, that's it.
Caregiving stuff that I'm responsible for, so I have to be super careful. But if it's a problem, I'll just say you can be in the camera, let me know. I know. I love
I think I remember that.
just being back in this room.
Yeah. I will,
Is it?
Yeah, I almost got a little teepee, but I was like, driving because I started to go next door. So I was like,
Good.
opposite. So dark people are cute but scared. Well, you make
Well, so at that point in time, the council would choose someone to. So if it's not you and it's not me, they have to vote. Okay, we'll first decide one. Okay.
I think I can do it.
You send me more.
Yeah.
So if our clock is right, I think, is there any chance that we are going to get another member?
Counselor Byers connected via Zoom, it looks like tonight. Counselor Byers, are you here to participate or just to listen in?
I'm sorry. Can you please repeat that, Jordan?
Sorry, Mr. Byers, it's a little tricky hearing from Zoom.
Council Byers, speak. Council Byers.
I want to say thank you all. This is our first night in hybrid meeting, so we're working on a few kinks here.
Councilor Byers, can you hear me?
Yes.
Would you like for us to wait for you to arrive?
No, I still have a touch of a stomach flu.
I'm sorry?
So I still have a stomach flu. So I'm sticking close to home and participating.
Will you be participating in the meeting or only listening?
Is it possible for me to participate this way?
She's asking if it's possible to participate in this manner.
You know, it will require, Hector needs to be the one to amplify her when she speaks. By having the headphones in, just make her while she goes, that's great. Oh, great, you have no to do this.
If anybody can feel that low hum, it is, I think it's the heat pump, isn't it? Or the, yeah, is it a boiler? Yeah,
I'm not sure what it is.
yeah, so it is the heating system, this much I know.
Council Fire, we're just gonna go ahead and have people speak tonight. The trick is gonna be, we can't hear from the Zoom side without Hector repeating what you say. And so that should be something we work around and figure out as we go. That sound good?
So before I call this meeting to order, I just want to thank everybody. It's so exciting to be here in Town Hall for the first time since COVID. I love this space and I'm, really proud and pleased to be here with my esteemed colleagues and our fantastic staff. And then having a room full of residents only makes it better. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and call the study session to order of the Talent City Council, December 7th. Roll call, please.
Councilor Clark,
Here.
Councilor Pinara. Here. Councilor Breyer.
Here.
Councilor Christensen.
Here.
Councilor Byers.
Here.
Councilor Fairweather. Mayor Ayers-Blood.
Here.
Mayor Hugh.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is meeting accessibility. Lucero or Hector?
This is a question for the public. Do any attendees who make this meeting translated into Spanish? We ask you to please raise your hand. Esta es una pregunta para el público. Si alguien necesitaría esta reunión interpretada en español, por favor, hace su mano ahora.
You know what? I realized I don't have the study session agenda in front of me. Is there one?
But there is one, you should immediately go into the topic, which is reviewing building policies and legal progress.
Okay, so with that, I am an impacted property owner at 315 East Rack Road in the zoning that is the subject of this matter. So I'm going to step down from the dais and join my fellow residents as an impacted property owner. So I will hand the gap with that. Dave, I believe if I'm correct, we'll hand the gavel to the council president and you can proceed from there. Thank you, Eleanor.
And I'll just like to say that I also am a property owner in the area. So under the advice of our attorney, I'm also going to teach myself to remain present so that we can continue to have this conversation. However, I probably shouldn't be deciding in the meeting. So I think the process is the council selects somebody for us to provide. So you want to nominate somebody like Jason?
I nominate Councilor Clark.
Second.
Second, I'll second that.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Jason.
All right, thank you. it's presentation on rebuild progress. No, but very much, yes. Presentation on rebuild progress in multi-family high density settings.
All right. Thank you, presiding officer. Can you all hear me okay, both in the room and on Zoom? Are we doing okay? Okay. Well, yeah, I want to say thank you everyone for making it through our first hybrid meeting together. We're gonna have a lot of glitches. You're gonna see a lot of my side chin. So we appreciate everyone on Zoom rolling the punches. And for folks coming out to town hall tonight. It's good to see you all in flesh. All right, I believe you all are already seeing my screen.
Is it the same? Should we turn or?
I apologize, I only printed it out for the city council meeting, so this will be a different slide presentation.
Okay.
All right. Well, tonight what we'll have a study session on is rebuilding progress and policies specific to the multifamily high density. Before I dive in to showing the numbers and talking about some policy direction that we'll be looking at, I want to make some strong clarifications because there's been a lot of confusion around this topic and what's on our city council agenda for tonight. I am not seeing what you are all seeing. Let's see if that works. Hey, there we go. So resolution 22051R and resolution 22052R, these are two resolutions that are on city council agenda tonight that the city has received a really high level of communication concern from our residents from. So I'm going to clarify a few things before we dive into the data and presentation. I want to just reassure everyone that this is the beginning of this discussion. These resolutions first came on the agenda a couple months ago as a way to start talking about, what we're doing with rebuild and what the next phase of this process is. Council requested a study session to dive deeper into this topic before giving any policy direction. But due to our council rules, we had to leave this on the agenda as a date certain item. So while it is on tonight's city council agenda, and while a lot of folks have seen and been concerned, this is a discussion, and the recommendation tonight will be for council, to not consider those resolutions, but to give direction for future policy to be written. But I do want to say the concerns being expressed are being heard. And we're taking note of these concerns, and if there's concerns that don't fall in this area, I am reaching out to folks individually to set up meetings. But hopefully what we discussed tonight can provide the context to have a really productive conversation. And so with that, I'll jump into the official slide. Oh, I should have skipped you fast. So these are the major concerns that we're hearing through emails and phone calls to City Hall. There's mostly around the ability to rebuild single-family homes, the ability to build a single-family home if you purchased a lot that was burned, the size of lots, what will fit in lots and neighborhoods, the cost of new construction, and some other topics there. So once again, hopefully the study session can help provide the context to start having this conversation to figure out the next steps. Okay, we'll dive into the official order of business here. So in our municipal code, we have a section called Title 18, Chapter 195, subsection 050. This is part of our zoning code, and it states that if the structure is lost to calamity, to a fire, flood, explosion, or other, any future structure or use of my property shall conform to the regulations for the zone in which it is located. This is a piece of our code that was added in back in 2006. This code was not put to the test until the Alameda Fire. And what this code really impacts is the single-family detached homes in a residential high-density zone. So what you see here, everything in the dark purple is our high-density zoning for residential. And when you look at Burn Star, there is a large section of our high-density zoning that was impacted by the fire. So the city, after the Alameda Fire, through our emergency powers, decided to temporarily suspend that section of our code to allow people to rebuild their single-family homes, even though those single-family homes were no longer allowed in high-density areas. At the same time, council also decided to suspend our section 3.40. That is the section where we put a construction excise tax, which goes to helping build affordable housing. Council waived that, and the staff went ahead and refunded anyone that had been charged that for a rebuild. So the catch of this is this temporary suspension of codes will end when the emergency declaration ends. That's our default. And so what we're really starting the conversation with is, oh, I definitely got that one right. When is it appropriate to declare the emergency over? And do we want to make any changes to our code to better support rebuild after natural disaster in the future? Those are the two more policy questions that we'll be asking for direction from council. On what direction we provide, staff will take and start drafting potential ordinances or policies for you all to consider. Tonight's presentation is to provide the information to help us start that conversation. We'll look at the rebuild that has occurred in residential high density. We'll look at how much rebuild there is still left to go. And we'll also look at what remaining rebuild may look like under different policy scenarios. And once again, the information I share tonight will be solely focused on that residential high density zoning, which is the major point of concern for most folks. We'll move ahead. So there were 314 properties. Actually, I should pause there. Any questions that I can clarify or answer?
We have different staff at top.
Yes, absolutely. We have our counselor writers changing seats so her neck does not get completely twisted around trying to see this PowerPoint. I'm definitely not used to this microphone for all you. All right, so we have 314 properties in residential high density that were significantly impacted by the Almeda fire. That means that they were either fully damaged, the homes that were on there, or they were destroyed to the point where it counted as full damage. Of those 314 properties, 68% have been issued a building permit. I just want you all to reflect on that and celebrate that for a minute for being only 2 years back from the fire. Having 68% of our properties actively coming back is a really incredible thing. And the build-back that we're seeing is really varying levels of mixed density. 6 of the properties are building fourplexes, 12 properties are building duplexes. We do have 3 cluster home developments that are in the works, and 16 properties have built at least one ADU on them. What this accounts for is that 22% of rebuilt properties, 22% of that 314 are rebuilding with more than 1 unit on. But I will say that the higher density that's being built is concentrated in certain areas. Oak Valley and Autumn Ridge, which are the 2 areas you can see my mouse. Nope, again, it's okay. If we exclude Oak Valley and Autumn Ridge, where they have CCRs that do not allow ADUs to rebuild, I believe, we can see that 32% of the remaining properties are being built back at mixed density. So what about the properties that haven't been built? So right now, there's 101 properties in that residential high density zone. And what you're looking at in this map here is the blue area is our residential high density zone. And then any outlying property is property that has not yet filed for a building permit within that zone. The brown outline denotes someone that owned the property during the fire and still owns it. And the green denotes properties that have been sold since the fire. 53% of these unbuilt properties are within subdivisions or public utility districts, where their CCRs do place limits on the density that can be built. If we're looking just at size, which is another way to estimate potential density, 6% of the unbuilt properties are less than 2,500 square feet. Typically, we expect only a single family home to be able to be built on a lot that size. 30% are between 2,500 to 5,000 square feet, which we typically see as the maximum 2 dwellings on that size property. And then 65% are over 5,000 square feet, where there's more flexibility than other units that can be built. So any questions on the properties that are still left to rebuild and where we are in the progress of rebuilding after the fire? Yeah, let me ask actually, council, if you don't mind, for folks in the audience, I'm gonna get through the presentation, to give council a chance to ask their questions, and then we'll open it up to the audience both in person as well as on Zoom to ask follow-up questions as well. So thank you. So as a reminder, the default policy is that when the emergency declaration ends, we will no longer be suspending the part of our code that is allowing single-family homes to be rebuilt in this high-density housing. And so what I'd like to share on this next slide is an array of potential policy directions that will have various outcomes. So I'm going to walk through what these different policy selections are, and my hope is to give a gauge in council of which direction you're interested in exploring more, for us to come back with some technical policy and more detail. So the first scenario one, would be allowing the like-for-like rebuild at any time. I believe the city of Hillsborough follows this policy. And this says if a house or a home is lost to any involuntary action, say a calamity, fire, flood, earthquake, etc., like-for-like rebuild can occur. Yeah, Councilor Castillo?
Did they have any time limitations on that? Because I've worked in places where you could do that, but you had so long to do it.
So I'm going to point it to Dave, because he was the one that did the research on it.
Of course, it varies from city to city. Hillsborough doesn't have a time limitation on it. Jackson County has a similar ordinance that has a 4-year time limit.
Scenario two would be allowing like-for-like rebuild if an emergency declaration is in effect. This is really what we're defaulting to now. With this scenario, we would look to clarify in our code that is going to be a policy moving forward. Just to emphasize why that one's in gray. And you'll see here, scenario 3 and 4 is to end temporary suspension of current code. That is if we were to declare an emergency over, and revert back to our current code with no changes, what would the impact? Now, I do want to give a quick reminder because a lot of the concerns we received from community members was about the zoning where they live. So the last time zoning was set was in 2006 when we set what the different types of zoning were in the city. And then there have been small changes, the last one made in 2019, that states what is allowed or not allowed in those zoning areas. So when it comes to city zoning, that is always a subject that council is welcome to take up as we look at. And there's always a subject that neighborhoods or individuals are always welcome to make a request to rezone the property. But zoning designations are a separate conversation from what we're having today. Today what we're talking about is what do we want to continue our rebuild policy moving forward, recognizing that is dependent on the emergency declaration. Now that we're 2 years out, at some point we're going to have to end our emergency declaration, and what impact will that have? I hope that is clear, the difference between those two. So one question that came up in the previous meeting was, how many housing units can we expect under the different scenario policies? So once again, scenario one would be allowing single family like-for-like to rebuild at any time. We can expect probably around 200 units to be built if every single property was to rebuild. We know after that that's not always the case. But say they all did, we can expect around 200 housing units to come back into town. Scenario two, which is allowing single family like-for-like to rebuild during emergency declarations, that'll fall somewhere in the middle between scenario 1 and 3, depending on the date that we declare the emergency order. Scenario 3, we would follow current code, but the property owners would follow the CCNRs within their state neighborhoods. So this is in a scenario 4, which means all properties are built to current code, even when they're in conflict with their HOA CCRs. And I want to clarify, because a lot of folks are concerned about this. Of the remaining properties left to rebuild, only 7 properties would be in violation of either the city's minimum in higher residential density or violation of their CCNRs, depending on what they build. So while definitely concerned for those properties, most properties in the HOA with CCNRs are small enough where the CCR policies matches what the city policy would be. They would like their private ADU to be built, and some folks may not want to live in ADU. Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah, I'm not tracking these numbers. We were talking about 101 houses in the high density zone that haven't been built. What's the tie-in between the numbers you're seeing?
Yeah, great question. I'm gonna jump back. So this is a bit of a small map, but I want you to see there's different sizes on these different lots, and the larger lots really represent where we did have multifamily housing before the fire. And so this is including the multifamily housing that was there before coming back, because they would not be allowed to live single family home, since they didn't have single family home.
Got it.
And I do want to give a quick shout out to our planning commission, Kim Tremio, to do an incredible job, putting these estimates together as looking at individual properties to figure out challenges. Any questions where these rebuild minimums came from? Or what they might mean? And I do, want to just clarify for folks in the audience to do scenario one. So things towards the left end is allowing more single family homes to be built. And things on the right is leaning towards having less single family homes be built and having more properties of ADUs, duplexes, or more. And so with that, I'm just going to go ahead and throw out some of the concerns we're hearing from our community. And to kind of just walk through them, but before I do, I'm going to see any questions about the presentations from council, and then turn to the community to ask any questions about the data shared, so that we're all working from the same ground level. Okay, perfect. I'd love to turn to the community members to see if they have any questions and council is comfortable. Could we do so?
Yeah, should we call people up to the mic? We used to have secret request forms, but we can just.
So typically for folks who are in the room tonight, we have a speaker request form that we would love for you to fill out and then hand over to the city or city reporter, so she can call your name for kind of questions. We're recognizing we're just getting back into swing of things. If folks want to just raise their hands, and then our presenting officer can call you to the mic as well.
One of the back is first, then follow up with you.
Hey everybody, good to see you. Derek Volkart, just a bit outside town. It's great to be back in the old town hall.
Thank you, Mr. Volker, you have 5 minutes.
Okay. Just a quick follow-up. I was curious, I think it was Clackamas County was the county that you guys were referencing, or did I? I'm sorry, different county.
City of Hillsborough.
Hillsborough, oh, I'm sorry, it's Hillsborough, I don't know. Sorry, I got confused. On Hillsborough or Jackson County, I'm just curious if in those situations, particularly when properties burn down, it sounds like they're allowing a rebuild. And I'm curious what their policy might be on SDCs and construction excise tax, if that's even applicable at all.
I'm not prepared to answer that question.
Okay.
I don't know how to.
Thanks anyway. Yeah.
But I will say, Mr. Volkart, brings up an important question around SDCs. If you don't mind, Councilor Blair, let me make a clarification.
Please, please.
There's been a lot of confusion between what an SDC is and what a CET is. And an SDC is what folks pay with new development to buy into our system. And what we're, our system, our water system, our street system, our park system, etc. It helps us make sure we maintain that system and keep its capacity big enough for all the folks who are living here in town. So everyone who's rebuilding does not need to pay SDCs for what they have before. And that policy will continue even after the emergency declaration is over. That is the same thing as if you buy a home, you buy a piece of property that has a home line, that home is already paid SDCs, we're not going to require you to pay them again. So in that scenario, if you still have the current property and have not rebuilt, we will give you credit for the SDC that will be on your home mortgage. So I want you all to know that cost saving will continue. The CET, the construction excise tax, is a 1% tax on your estimate for rebuilding. So the new development you make is an extra tax that goes into a fund that the city uses to support affordable housing. Just want to clarify the difference between those two. That one is contingent on the emergency declaration.
Thank you. Please state your name and city for the record.
My name is Ralph Peterson. I live at 195 Suncrest Road in Talent. I have two quick questions. The first one is, how is it determined if the CCNRs are still in effect? Okay. And my second question is, will this PowerPoint, which I gleaned a lot of information from, is it going to be available online?
The second question I cannot answer, but we just finished it today, so we'll have this post it tomorrow morning at the website. And for the second question, my knowledge of the CCNRs comes from what different HOA presidents are sharing with me. When it comes to going for effective or not, the city doesn't actually oversee CCRs. And when we pump that one to our attorney, can give you a more official answer, hopefully.
I hope I understand your question, but I think it's what happens if the CCNRs are in conflict with city zones. Is that capturing it?
Well, yeah, I guess the question is, how much protection do the CCNRs offer? Over, it's been a long time since the subdivision that we're in issued their CCNRs.
Well, the CCNRs are recorded as part of your land deed, and they stay in effect until the CCNRs are changed, unless the law affects them. And for example, in a couple of decades ago, finally Congress said you can't have CCNRs that discriminate against people. So in that case, the law sort of preempts the CCNR. It depends a little bit on how the CCNRs were established in the first place. And I haven't had a chance to look at each CCNR for the city of Talent yet to know. My guess is whatever the city policy is will force a change. If it's different, will force a change in those CCNRs. But if your question is not quite that, but are the CCNRs still in effect and will they remain in effect if your HOA doesn't change them? The answer is yes, they would, because they are part of your deed in the county land records.
Thank you.
I hope that.
Yes, it does.
Thank you. Anyone else? Please state your name and city for the record.
My name is Darby Ayers Flood, and I reside in the city of Talent for a long time. I've been on the side of the mine, it's pretty fun. I have an impacted property at 315 East Brent Road. My questions are, and we're just taking questions, is that, will we be taking comments later, or, okay. My question is, given the different scenarios that are being proposed, is there a scenario where the current practices can be extended anyway, so that people who are in situations such as myself, where I haven't had the opportunity to rebuild for a lot of different reasons, and the economy being what it is, continues to shift my ability to address a viable plan for my family. Is there a possibility that we could extend the practice beyond the current practices or the current waivers beyond the sundowning of the emergency order while we work on a more permanent process or permanent solution that could impact. I'm just thinking in terms of timing and how long, in my experience, sometimes some of these more lengthy processes can take. And I personally would feel more secure about that if the city were to do a combination of both, where the exhaustion of the emergency order doesn't threaten the ability for folks to wait while we come up with a more permanent solution, if there are any timing concerns.
I understand the question, I think I do. I think it was really answered by my response to Councilor Pastiso about the Hillsborough ordinance or the Jackson County ordinance. You could change your land use ordinance with respect to non-conforming uses to say that if a property, if a structure is involuntarily destroyed, you could rebuild a like structure. You could say anytime, or you could say within a certain number of months or years. So I think what you're asking about would be addressed by that, by saying, let's allow that for a certain additional period of time. But do it in ordinance, not just in an emergency order.
Yes, and sorry that I was not very clear. I will probably be more clear when we make statements, but I think when I think about the process of amending an ordinance and think about the schedule, would it be the regular process of going through the planning commission first, public hearings, then coming to council for public hearings, with I think some council meetings being scaled back perhaps. I'm just concerned that if we're considering a long-term, a permanent change, which I support, I would hope that we would take into consideration if there is a need to extend beyond the sundown date, which I suspect will go.
Then the question is, could we, if we're working on a permanent solution, could we extend this temporary suspension through an extension of the emergency order? And the answer to that is yes.
Okay. So I'd ask the council to bear that in mind as you decide on how to move forward. Thank you.
Please state your name and city for the record.
Yes, Karen Larson. I live at 114 Autumn Ridge, here in town. So this might be the wrong place to ask this. It's a zoning question. And I heard earlier something about this isn't about zoning, but it kind of is.
We have a planning director in the room too, so she can help.
Okay. So I understand. So I came in the office today, the planning office, and I saw your zoning map up there from 2006. Most of the homes in Autumn Ridge were built somewhere between 1995 and 1999. So was that a different zoning at that time? Would that have been the single family zoning? And at what point did it change to high density? And who does that? And how is that done without people knowing about it? Or maybe we really just shut our eyes, I don't know. So I'm just wondering what the process is as far as started out single family, or at least built a single family, and is now high density. And then there was a change, an adjustment or something in 2019. So just trying to get that through my head.
Absolutely. I would love to invite Kristen as our community development director to address that.
Actually, we talked.
Yeah.
So I'm still confused.
And I'm not going to be able to answer your question anymore.
Okay.
So I actually spoke with Karen earlier today, and I don't know the answer to your question as to what it was originally zoned. We have to do some research and find out if we have those old zoning maps to see what it was done and whenever we established a zoning map. I think we probably had zoning maps before 2006. I have not seen those in the office, so it would probably be in the archive somewhere. What was the other question?
So the process for changing.
The process for changing the code, you're correct. It would, typically, it's a legislative process. We go through, amending the code. We, go through the planning commission reviews that. They make a recommendation to the city council. Then the city council then adopts the code. When that was done, that is how that process was done, and in this case, it would have been a map amendment, not necessarily a text amendment. So there's two different things we're talking about, text amendments and map amendments. This is, the colors on the map were changed at some point. I'm not sure why. I talked to one of the developers today about, Autumn Ridge. I'm not sure why it was ever zoned high density. It's only single family out there. They have fairly large lots, so I really don't know why it was ever made to high density. And the same with, the same issue we have with Oak Valley as well. We're not really sure why that was ever zoned high density, other than it was initially a mobile home park. So that's the best answer I can give you tonight.
Can I supplement that a little bit? Before a zone can be changed, the notice requirements do have to go out. So when the residential high density zone was established in 2019, most of us were around, but I'm fairly certain notices were out to all of these affected. That's a state law requirement. The other point that I wanted to emphasize was that if you, let's say you have a single family home in a zone, and the zone requirements get changed, your home then becomes what's called a non-conforming use, which means you could continue that non-conforming use. You can continue, the person you sell to can continue that non-conforming use, as long as you don't change the use, you don't turn it into a commercial building or something like that. As long as it's a single family house, and particularly with essentially the same dimensions, you can continue perfectly lawful.
First, I want to say I appreciate the informality of this, that I can come back a second time. I have been on that side of the seat through a couple of Measure 56 notices. Will this amendment to the ordinance, should it be decided to pursue, require a Measure 56? And can you describe a Measure 56?
Well, I can describe it generally. It's just a requirement that property owners within an hour, I can't remember that, there's a set distance, I think it might be 600 feet. Right now, I can't recall. But all property owners within a certain distance of where the zone is going to change have to be notified by me.
And an amendment would require that.
Well, I'm not sure. In this case, it depends on what the change would be. If the change would be to allow non-conforming uses to continue even after destruction by a fire, you just treat that as if there never had been a fire, just is a non-conforming use that continues. Then I'm not sure whether the state law would require notice, because you're really not changing something. You're allowing status, in effect, the status quo continues. But that's something we'll look into once council decides how to proceed.
Great. In the absence of a Measure 56, I would strongly encourage the city to go above and beyond to inform the impacted properties about this, just so that there isn't a lack of information. This is an important issue, and I would hope that everybody had an opportunity to get educated and be present. Thanks.
Is there anyone online on Zoom that would like to comment or ask questions or any questions right now?
Councilor Carter, I do not see any raised hands.
Okay, thank you, Victor.
Yes.
So, does anyone, if everyone's questions are answered, would anyone like to offer comments at this time?
And I will say, before we jump into the comments, I'm going to throw up in front on the PowerPoint once I figure out my tech. The three scenarios that we're really looking at, and I will be, looking for council's feedback and thoughts of which direction you're interested in potentially heading. And one we should say, as a community announcement, we just posted an IT administrator position for the city. So please look at our website to apply. You can help us out on that segment. All right, thank you. So as a reminder, scenario one would be a change to our code, that section F that requires any structure that's lost to a clearing and rebuild be conforming to what the current zoning is. This scenario would change that section of the code to allow that for rebuild at any time or for a specific period of time after the clearing. In the example of Jackson County, where they allow 4 years of time. Scenario two would just link it to our emergency declaration. So once the emergency declaration ends, the temporary suspension of that particular set of code would end. And then scenario three would be to just end the suspension and go back to our current code. And if another natural disaster happens in the future, the city council administration decide at that point what they need to do for that specific disaster.
I see the lines pondering.
So we're discussing now.
I believe so. We're moving into discussion now.
Yeah, please.
Councilor Postisa?
Well, I would just say that my initial thought is that I'm sort of leaning towards number one, but at this point, it seems like there needs to be some qualification on it. Like things that come to mind are, that you can rebuild as long as it's owned by the same person who experienced the disaster. I'm not so sure it makes sense to allow a non-conforming use to this, once its property's passed on to someone else, because there's no home there at that point, supposedly, and it's pretty clear because you can't get a tour of it or anything when you buy it. And I think at that point, it should probably go to what the current code says, or perhaps a time limit or both. I mean, we're sort of in an interesting time now where we have disaster, we have pandemic, and building costs have gone through the roof. So we're in a pretty unique time now. So I'm not sure we want to memorialize in our code something that's specific to this very unique time. Well, I do think we need to accommodate the unique time. So those are just my initial thoughts.
Councilor Gray.
I agree with Councilor Postisa. Just to clarify, scenario two, someone has a house fire, it wouldn't be eligible. That would just be for scenario one.
Correct.
Yeah.
in regards to Councilor Pacito's comments, just thinking about the context of this conversation going back to shortly after the fire. And I can speak for myself, my intention in permitting for the non-conforming use was that it would apply to the owner of the home at the time of the fire. The intention was, to allow someone who had lost a home to rebuild what they had. I'll take my share of the responsibility for not focusing on that more clearly and really trying to working to make that policy. What has occurred since then is that the allowance of the non-conforming uses has been preserved regardless of whether or not the property has changed hands. Councilor Pacito's comment, it connects to the time when this suspension, when this state of exception was originally agreed to by the council as part of the state of emergency, and that my intention behind that was directed towards the owner of the home at the time when the house was lost. Any other comments? Great. Yeah, so we kind of dipped into this a little bit before, but maybe if Dave, if you could offer some clarity about the idea of having a provision that is tied to the owner of a home at a certain time rather than tied to the property itself.
Councilor, I can't offer a lot of clarity. There are cities that have done that. I don't know whether they have been challenged and survived the challenge or not. I have not yet been able to do that research. Typically, restrictions on property run with the property, not with the owner. So it would be something at least a little out of the ordinary. And I would need a little time to do the research to get hopefully some additional clarity on whether there would be likely to be a legal challenge and what the outcome might be.
Well, I would appreciate hearing more about that at a future meeting. Given where we are, I absolutely still support those who lost their home being able to rebuild what they had. And I understand that the economy presents challenges to that. I have some hesitation, I guess, about scenario one being completely open-ended. But like I said, I still would want those who lost their home to be able to rebuild, like for like. Any other comments from council? Councilor Pacito?
Yeah, just as I'm thinking, just keeping this in balance with our stated goals of trying to provide more affordable housing and the need for increased density to do that. So that's the tension I feel, wanting people to be able to rebuild what they have, but then stumbling a little bit when the property sells and we're still limiting, it can still be limited to one one single family dwelling when we do have a need to have more housing in the city. And so in order to do that, so that's kind of the tension I'm doing. That's why I think we need to have some sort of a limit on it. The time limit is easy in a way because it still goes with the property, but it doesn't necessarily catch everyone who's not the owner at the time of the disaster. And it does put, in some ways, an artificial limit on how long, with market changes and everything, people can still wind up in a bind. So anyways, that's just the tension I'm trying to sort out in my mind. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, I think part of the process here will be about looking at how the different options would affect people in various situations. And that's what I would need a little more time and information to be able to process. Because there's a lot of people having a lot of different experiences with how they recover from the fire, different financial challenges, timelines for making progress on rebuilding, and really want to consider carefully how different approaches that we would take to affect people in different situations.
And if you don't mind just checking in with Dr. Gilbert on Byers' and comments as well.
Thank you. Councilor Byers or Victor, would you, I think Councilor Byers can hear us. Do you have any comments that you'd like to offer, Councilor?
Not at the moment, and I'll be exiting shortly to come join you all in person.
Councilor Byers said that she doesn't have anything at the moment, but she will be joining us shortly.
Thank you.
Okay, so my next step, just from what I heard back today, narrowing down the scenarios to looking at allowing like rebuilds for property owners impacted at the time of fire. Also looking at allowing like rebuild with a time frame on it. And then presenting that information in a way to see how different folks who are in different scenarios would be impacted under each different policy. I think that's a great next step.
I think that was well stated.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I just have a quick question. With that, will we still be hearing this on the regular agenda and be speaking, have a chance to speak at that point in time? Or should this be the time that we submit our speaker request?
There will be both opportunities.
Thank you.
So to clarify, if anyone in the audience would love to comment tonight, you are more than welcome in the site section. This topic will also be discussed and brought up during the regular council meeting if you prefer to speak then.
Ready for the next agenda item?
All right.
Yes. The next item on the agenda is discussion of rebuild incentives. We did that. Now we've got questions and comments. Right, so the next item on the agenda is adjournment. This study session is adjourned at 6:26.